If you have any questions as I'm going through, please do feel free to ask me. If not, we'll have some question time at the end as well. Yes, so as Christina says, I do work in mainstream and special education schools, and my aim really is to help all children to reach their potential. That can look very different. It could be academically, socially, in the family situation, and so on. What I'll talk to you about today, though, is very much around bullying. Bullying happens everywhere. It happens in all schools, in all workplaces. It shouldn't, but it does. So we're trying to drive forward as to how we can recognise it, identify it, stop it, prevent it, manage the follow-ups. So that's what we're trying to do. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about school context. You'll know a lot about schools anyway, because of your backgrounds and why you're in the Department of Education. But I want to give a little bit of context, especially around special school contexts. I'll talk to you about what bullying is, and also, therefore, what bullying isn't. I'll talk about bullying roles, about the Stand Together trial, which is the UK trial that we've been running, or we have been running. What we know about anti-bullying programmes for pupils with special educational needs and disabilities. The idea of having an inclusive definition around bullying and how we've developed a new definition for that. I'll talk a little bit about social network analysis that myself and some of my team have been running for the last year or so. It's the first of its kind. I'll talk to you about Keep Spend, which is something we're currently running a randomised control trial. And then I put in there wisdom, but I may well cut that because of time now. We've got shorter time now with this session. Okay, so a little bit about school context. I won't go into a lot of detail, but just so we're all on the same page as we're going through these. So in mainstream schools, so this is based on UK, but obviously it does apply to other countries and to a degree as well. So in mainstream schools in the UK, mainstream schools meet the needs of the majority of children. So the most children will go to a mainstream school. They adhere to a standard curriculum and teach to a range of abilities. Varying levels of support will be in place to try and provide adjustments to enable each child to participate in lessons. So most children will be able to access the curriculum, and the curriculum is fairly standard in mainstream schools. In special schools, and fewer people probably have the experience of working in special schools are equipped to teach children with specific educational needs and or disabilities. These children find it impossible to progress academically in a mainstream school. So they have to have, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about this, but they have to have a legal document to say that they should be in a specialist education school where they can actually be supported for their needs. They have an EHCP, so Education Health Care Plan, that details a specific need and how those should be met. So, types of special schools. There are various categories. I will go into more of these in detail if you need me to. But the categories we see in the UK, there are 7. Schools will be split into speech language communication schools. So the children there have to have a primary need for speech language communication. Cognition and learning with significant learning difficulties, cognition and learning with moderate learning difficulties, social, emotional, mental health, sensory, autism, physical. However, these are the 7 categories, and there are schools that have those as you say the primary need of the child. Most children will not just have a primary need, they will also have a secondary need, a tertiary need, and so on. Some schools also do not just focus on one type of need. So you might find, for example, a school that has almost the same number of children who have autism as their primary need as social, emotional, mental health, for example, and there might be an overlap. Some schools that I've been into actually have children with all of these needs. So these are the categories, but that doesn't mean a school will only focus on the one category. In terms of what that looks like actually in the classrooms. So in the UK, in a mainstream primary school, you'll have about an average of 27 pupils. Anyone who's worked in a UK mainstream school in the UK, either as a teacher or as a researcher, will know that that can go up to, say, 34 children. So as I said, 27 is very much the average. In secondary, the average is 23. The staff, you'll have a teacher and maybe a TA. So if there's in primary school, if they have over 30, then they are required to have a teaching assistant. But often you'll go into classrooms, as you may well have done already, and there is just a teacher in the classroom. In terms of special schools, the number of pupils in primary and secondary can go anywhere from 5 to usually about 12. Again, this is just an example. There will be some classes with fewer, so I've been in some where there's actually 3 children in a class, and sometimes maybe 13 or so on. So just as an idea, 5 to 12. Staff, you'll have the main teacher, and often a teaching assistant or one-to-one or support staff. But again, depending on the children's needs in a particular classroom, that can be you have the same number of teachers or adults in the classroom as you do pupils. So if all of your pupils in a classroom need one-to-one support or specialist support, you will have the same number of ratio of adults to children. I've actually been into classrooms where there've been more adults because you'll have 1 adult per child and then the overall teacher leading it. That gives a sort of a context. Special schools often create, don't always, but often create pathways as well. So they'll have children split into different pathways of level of need. So, for example, maybe 2 or 3. Sometimes they will have a level of need where the children will be in a class. You might have, say, 5 children in a classroom. They've got one-to-one support, and those children are solely just working on their own. They do not engage with the other children in the classroom. You can go up to the next pathway where you might have, say, somewhere between 5 and 12. They will all follow the same curriculum, and there'll be a level of engagement with each other. And then you go to the third pathway, is that if there is one, and they often call that a transition pathway. The children in the top pathway often could get on in a mainstream setting, but for some reason they wouldn't be able to reach their potential in that setting. And so they're very much more capable of following the curriculum as we would expect in a mainstream school. So when you're thinking about SEND and special schools, over 1.7 million pupils in England have SEN, so special educational needs. 5.3% of all UK pupils have an EHCP, so an education healthcare plan. That is a legal document. A legal document to say they have additional needs that they need support with. And 14.2% of all UK pupils have a SEN support plan. That's not a legal document, that's not an EHCP, but a support plan can be put in place by the schools to say we recognise that these children have needs, and this is how we're going to plan to support them. So if you look at that, that's quite a large percentage of children, who have SEN, and obviously then if you look at the percentages, that's quite a lot of children actually. Approximately 160,000 pupils attend special schools. And there are just over 1,500 special schools across the UK, and just under 400 mainstream schools with a SEND unit. Now, the reason I'm adding all this information, this overload of stats, is I'm trying to make a point. My point is there are a lot of children in this category of educational need, and I'm going to be honest, there isn't the research into this area. Researchers generally focus on mainstream schools for a number of reasons, and there really isn't enough research supporting all these children, 1.7 million children. So this is where I've slipped into this field to try and address some of those issues. So talking about bullying. Bullying is a public health concern, so we're just talking generically about bullying now. Public health concern, well, we know that about 37 to 42% of children and young people are exposed to bullying. It's quite a large amount, but this goes up to, the highest rate we've seen is 69% of children with special educational needs and disabilities. Every school, this is now a legal requirement, every school in the UK has to have an anti-bullying policy, and many have anti-bullying programmes embedded into their curriculum, but very few, especially in the UK, none, are currently evidence-based. What I mean by evidence-based is we know that they work. They've been tested in lots of different situations by multiple researchers. We know the evidence shows that it works. So a lot of teachers, when you go and speak to them, or if you are teachers, you'll probably know, they'll say, yes, we've got something that resembles an anti-bullying programme, or actually we pulled together resources ourselves and so on. So that's not evidence-based. We've got different types of bullying. So you've got physical bullying, you've got verbal bullying, relational bullying, which is like the relationship. So, for example, excluding someone from a group or talking about them behind their backs, spreading rumours, gossip. And you've got cyber, so online bullying. But what is bullying? Surprisingly, there is no standardised definition of bullying, and probably more shockingly, rather than surprisingly, no standardised, unified definition of bullying across the world, let alone in the UK. We have A definition from the 90s from a very famous psychologist called Daniel Bayes. He was a pioneer in bullying research back in the 90s, and he came up with this definition. He said a student is being bullied or victimized when he or she is exposed repeatedly and over time to negative actions on part of one or more other students, when someone intentionally inflicts injury or discomfort upon another, carried out by physical contact, by words, or in other ways. An imbalance in strength, the student who is exposed to the negative actions has difficulty defending his or herself. There have been lots of other definitions of bullying that have come out, most of which are based around Bayes' definition. But they also, we've done a lot of reading around this literature, and they all focus on three main aspects. So when we think about bullying, we need to think about three main aspects. So I've highlighted here: repeatedly and over time, intentionality, so intentionally inflicting injury or discomfort, and there being an imbalance in strength. Sorry. Okay, so I'll come back to this in a moment. I think that this is good as a bullying definition. I don't think it's great, and I think we've moved on a lot since the 90s. So I'll be talking about an inclusive definition a little bit later on. So when we think about the impact of bullying, here are just some of the impacts. So we know that being bullied, having experiencing either being bullied or being perpetrated bullying affects mental health. So it can reduce mental health. 25 to 40% of mental health problems may be attributed to bullying. There's a huge association there. It's also associated with school absenteeism. That makes absolute sense. If you're being bullied at school, you don't want to go to school, which therefore can impact school attainment. So it lowers school attainment and it reduces employment prospects. If you don't do well in school, what happens afterwards? Bully perpetrators are also at risk of later violent behaviours and drug use. You often see them being involved in domestic abuse later on in lives. And of course, there are higher rates of need for school care, primary care, and specialist health services. So thinking from a societal point of view, it's quite a burden having so much bullying going on and the consequences of that into adulthood. Okay, so what do we know about bullying in schools? School connectedness matters. So school environment matters and peers matter. School connectedness is like the cohesiveness in a school. If you have people who, excuse me, feel like they belong, feel within a school group, whether in a classroom, within the whole school, they feel able to talk to one another, feel able to talk to their teachers, and they're all on the same path, as it were, the same mindset, it works better. Bullying reducing. So school connectedness matters. School environment matters. Does the school have an anti-bullying policy? Is it detailed? Do they have a good definition? Do they act on it? Do they take bullying seriously? Many situations that we've been into, and teachers have said, sometimes I can't really decide how to deal with a bullying situation or when to follow it up. So do I phone parents or not? It's a lot of confusion around this. If a school gets it right, the school environment can make a huge difference. And peers matter. So my main argument at the moment is that the peers are the way that we move forward from this. It cannot just be the schools, it cannot just be the teachers or parents, it has to also be the peers, and actually peers are incredibly powerful. And I'm going to hopefully explain and hopefully convince you as to why that might be. So why do peers matter? I'm going to tell you a little bit about the bullying roles of peers to sort of build up this idea of what it looks like in this situation. Traditionally, when we think about bullying, you think about a bully and a victim. And for many, many years, the bullying research would focus on bully and victim. And that would be it. Everyone else would be a bystander. But the bystanders we now know have got their own roles. You've got the reinforcers. So the reinforcers are the people who might, as the picture shows in this very long version, pointing and laughing and reinforcing the action. The assistants, they don't start the bullying, but they will again support it. They might, for example, hold on to the child who's trying to run away, the victim in the situation. If they hold on to them, the bully can come and get them. So they will not initiate bullying, but they will support it. Then you have the defenders who try and stop bullying. And that can be either by standing up and saying stop, or it can be going telling a teacher, getting some help, telling an adult, or it can actually be coming up to the child later and saying, I saw what happened, are you okay? So it doesn't have to be in the moment offending, it can be making that child feel like they've been seen and understood. I've just been asked to join another meeting, I'll just decline that. Okay. And then you have the outsiders, so the bystanders. So all of these bystanders really, but the outsiders are everybody else who doesn't have an obvious role. Now, if you speak to these children, they say, no, I wasn't part of bullying. Everybody in that situation, though, is part of this bullying experience, this bullying involvement. So let's have a think. So I put a reference at the bottom here by Christina Sammavalli, who is one of the pioneers again in bullying research, but she's from Finland. And her team have created an anti-bullying program, which I'll tell you about. And what she says here, because she believes the same as me, that the peer bystanders are very, very important. She says, the way peer bystanders, who are neither bullies nor victims, react when witnessing bullying is crucial in either maintaining bullying or putting an end to it. Influencing the peer context is thus essential in effective anti-bullying work. It's not just about the bully and the victim, it's everybody else in the situation. Most children say bullying is wrong. Go and ask them, do you think bullying is a good thing? Most children say, no, it's wrong. Bullying should not take place. But most children reinforce it. It may become normal to exclude a child in class. And again, if you've been in a classroom situation, think back to that situation. Have you ever seen this? It may become usual for someone to exclude a child in class, laugh at a child in class if everyone else is laughing at them, ignore a child in class, and ignore when that child is bullied in class. This socially rewards the bully, and it deepens the hurt of the victim. So my argument here, along with Christina Sammavalli and all her colleagues, is that actually, if you can change the behaviour of the peers, you can change the bullying dynamic. So we need an anti-bullying programme that targets peers. It's not enough to have one that you just teach through a curriculum and everything's on the teacher. This has to be something that encourages the peers. So Christina Sammavalli and her colleagues in Finland developed what we call Kiva. So Kiva, and I'm glad Lars isn't here because I'm going to butcher the Finnish language. Kiva stands for Kiusaamista vastaan. Hopefully that was okay. Kiusaamista vastaan. And as you can see, they've taken the first two initials of the two words and they put it together. So that's why there's a capital B in the middle. This means against bullying. So the two words mean against bullying, and they've condensed it into, let's see, 4 letters. But the word Kiva itself in Finnish means nice, to be nice. So it's against bullying and nice. So it's quite a nice word for them to use for the anti-bullying programme. Kiva is a programme that's evidence-based, hugely evidence-based. It's now used in 23 different countries across the world, successfully used in 23 countries across the world. Evidence-based, and it's a whole school Finnish anti-bullying programme based on research that shows that bystanders, so everybody who's not a bully or a victim, bystanders can impact bullying by actively getting involved. So as I would say, it's the power of the peers. So what Kiva has is it has manualised lessons. So there are actually 3 units. So they work in groups of ages. So 3 units, 2 in primary school, so Key Stage 2, units 1 and 2, and then units 3 is the beginning of secondary school. Although I have to say the primary school data is shows a lot more effectiveness than the secondary. We can talk about that later as to why that might be. Secondary is much harder to control bullying. They have manualised lessons in all of these units. So teachers in theory can pick up the manual, pick up the book and deliver the lesson. We don't advise that, of course, but they could do. Everything's already designed for them. All the resources are designed for them. Any slides or presentations or videos or activities, everything is presented already in this manualised plan, manualised lessons. They teach it across a school year. In Finland, they have their lessons a little bit different. So they have 1.5 hour lessons, which we don't have in the UK. We have 45 minutes, which which still seems like a lot. So in 45 minutes, they have an hour and a half. So they have 10 lessons. When we use it in the UK, we split it into 20 lessons a year. So we put it into the PSHE curriculum as part of that. It's about 50% of that. It's all about relationships, peer building, and stuff. We have universal actions that happen across the school. So this is really the whole school approach. So universal actions could be putting up posters, anti-bullying posters, having assemblies, wearing high-vis vests. The teachers wear high-vis vests when they're on break time, so they're very much more visible. And then indicated actions are part of this programme as well. The indicated actions are for the teachers. So whenever an incident of bullying or potential bullying gets reported, there is a very clear indicated actions as to how that should be dealt with. Each school that has Kiva now also has a Kiva team lead and a Kiva, what is the word? What's the word? Kiva, why have I forgotten this? There's two roles, the Kiva roles. I'm looking at Caitlin, because me and Caitlin work on it. I've been on this for years. If you can't remember it, that makes me feel better. So yeah, you have the one person who oversees the entire thing, they're the Kiva lead, and then you have the Kiva team, so multiple people. And the importance of this is that it's not lots of people dealing with the situations, the different bullying, doing indicated. It's a team, a smaller team of maybe 3-4 people, and they go through all the indicated actions just themselves. Okay, so Kiva itself aims to promote peer empathy, raise awareness of the role that everyone plays, encourage safe strategies to support and help the victimised peer, but it also supports teachers to identify and tackle bullying cases. What's also interesting is that Kiva has been found to actually support teacher well-being as well, reducing teacher burnout and increasing their well-being. And again, I think having this really nice manualised plan helps. I think having indicated actions, how to deal with it helps. So, you know, I've spoken to teachers before and they say when they're dealing with a bullying situation, they take it home with them. They think about it. Should I have done this differently? Should I phone the parents now? Should I do this? And they take it home and they think about it and they never really get a chance to stop thinking. And now if you go into a school that's prevalent with bullying, think about how many times they're taking these things home. So it's actually been found to help improve the well-being of teachers as well, which is amazing. So this brings us to the Stand Together trial, which is why I was looking at Caitlin, because Caitlin and I have worked together for years now, originally on a Stand Together trial and now on Kiva Spend. So Stand Together trial was the first UK randomised controlled trial trialling Kiva. We know that Kiva is effective, so much evidence. But Finland and some of the other countries that have used it, very different in the way they look in their demographics, especially the socioeconomic demographics for the populations in the UK. So we thought, okay, we need to try it before we just assume it's going to work. We need to see if it works in the UK context. So we had a multi-site. So on here you can see hopefully the 4 points here. We had the University of Exeter, Bangor University in Wales. Let's go to Oxford here in the red, Oxford University. And the blue dot there is over Birmingham. It's actually Warwick University, but we worked with schools from Birmingham. That was their sites. We had 4 sites of data collection. We also worked with Cardiff, who were our trials unit. So they managed all the data side. So we had 4 sites and we worked with, I'll go over this in a moment, but 118 schools, equally split across those 4 sites. So we wanted to really see the different demographics of the different populations across the UK. So in the trials, 118 mainstream schools with at least 2 Key Stage 2 classes. We said that because you need to have enough people, enough children in a Key Stage to actually have the interactions. So if you only have 1 class, we may not see the sort of bullying or dynamics peer interactions as much. So at least 2 Key Stage 2 classes. Some of the ones we went into were 4 form entry, so 4 Year 3s. Classes, 4 Year 4 classes, so very large schools. There was a range of school sizes and percentage eligibility for free school meals. So EFSM is the eligibility for free school meals. That's an indicator of socioeconomic status of a family, if you're entitled to get a free school meal or not. When we split the schools up and it was randomly allocated, we had 5,944 children in the Kiva schools, and we had 5,167 children in what we call usual practice. So they in our trial, we collect data, but they don't run the intervention. They're like our control condition. The method, we had baseline where we collected data and we did that where possible before randomization. Then we had the key intervention with process evaluation for a year. And then after a year, we had the 12-month follow-up. And we actually saw a 90% retention in how much data we collected, which is fantastic. Okay, so we found in this trial, we found that pupils in the Kiva schools had reduced rates of victimization, actually 13%, reduced rates of victimization, increased levels of pupil empathy, and fewer reported peer problems. That's great. We didn't see a reduction in perpetration, which was a shame, but not wholly unexpected. Looking at other randomized controlled trials that have also trialled Kiva, you see similar patterns. Victimization is the one that really does seem to reduce the most. Although we got 13%, which we were happy with, 13% after 1 year reduction, actually the trial that ran it in Italy saw a 50% reduction in victimization.
Jill, can you say the difference between victimization, how was it measured, and perpetration?
Yeah, of course, thank you. So we had a scale called Dan Olweus, who had the definition, he created a scale called the Olweus Bully Victim Questionnaire, so the OBVQ. And the OBVQ asks children, so it's self-reporting from the child's perspective, a number of different questions. We asked 22 different questions, half around being bullied and half about bullying other children. And so lots of different situations, you know, I've been hit, kicked, pushed, or I've had someone spread rumours or gossip about me. So lots of different types of questions, but half as I have been victimised and half as I have victimised someone else. So if you're a victim of bullying, you receive it. If you're a perpetrator of bullying, you have been bullying someone else. Yeah. So it was self-reporting. So we did see the reduction in victimisation, as I said, in other RCTs, randomised controlled trials, it has been a lot higher. Our trial did run through COVID, which wasn't ideal and may have impacted it. But as I said, it has shown that Kiva can be successful up to 50% in 1 year in terms of reduction. The good news is we saw no difference by socioeconomic gradient or by sex. So it didn't matter if you were male or female as a child, or if you were from a very advantaged or a very disadvantaged area. There was no difference in the effect, which is great. Because that was one thing we were worried about, the socioeconomic gradient in the UK, because there's such diversity in the UK, but we found no difference on that. However, one thing we did ask about was children with special educational needs. Now, we were in mainstream schools, but of course there are a percentage of children in those mainstream schools who do also have special educational needs, either with an EHCP or more likely with a social support plan. So are there any anti-bullying programs for pupils with SEND? My team and I, about 18 months ago, started searching. Are there programs? Because when I spoke, let me just go back one. So when I spoke to teachers, I was leading the research teams in Oxford and in Warwick University at the time for the Kiva trial, Stand Together trial. And that was about 60 schools that I had direct contact with. And I made an effort to speak to as many of the schools individually, pretty much all of them, about the head teachers or the senior leadership team, and say, how did Kiva work for you? And on the whole, they say, yeah, we like it, etc. I said, okay, what didn't work? No, it was great. What didn't work? Really, I want to know what didn't work. If you had to flag one thing, and a lot of them said, we think our pupils with SEND didn't access the materials enough. So I said, okay, that's a huge red flag for me. So we already kind of know that it isn't as effective, and also perhaps the children themselves aren't accessing it as well. So my team and I then thought, okay, what programs are there, actually, anti-bullying programs for pupils with SEND? So we went on a big deep dive into the literature and completed a systematic review. We searched 10 different databases. So databases are the ones that list all the research. 10 databases, 4 grey literature sources. So grey literature, for example, could be the government website. So it's not an academic journal, it's a government website. And we looked for school-based anti-bullying strategies and programs for 4 to 18-year-olds with special educational needs, specifically for children with SEND. We found 15 studies with 14 different approaches. So already you can see there's no evidence base here, 14 different approaches in 15, so 14 different programs. 11 of these came from America, 3 came from England, and 1 came from Saudi Arabia. So not that representative of the world at all. When we looked at the quality of their research, we ran a full analysis on the quality, only one had the quality of 100%. So we have lots of tick boxes of things that we're looking for to see, gold standard research, only one had 100%. 6 had 80%, 6 had 60%, and 2 had 40%. The research is sort of there, but it's not great. It's a lot more needs to be done. Not many, for example, randomized controlled trials. I think it was one randomized controlled trial. The findings, 3 of the papers showed Boolean reduction. However, one of those had no statistics at all. 8 said they had victimization reduction, but 3 of them had no statistics at all. And 5 showed no change. So I looked at this and I just sort of threw my head in my hands and I thought, okay, there's not enough here. Something needs to be done. So very few studies, huge variation in approach, demographics, dosage, so how often they get it. Some, for example, had 2 sessions and that was it. Results and outcomes. So I said, okay, there's a clear need for social validity. Do you enjoy the program? Did the program work for you? Could you deliver it? Lots of these questions were not asked. Definite need for randomized control trials. Most of them don't have a control condition even. They've just had one group of children. Programs specifically for pupils with SEND, most of them were mainstream. They were mainstream programs delivered in mainstream schools, and they looked at the subcategory of SEND, just like we did with the Stand Together trial. A bit like that, it wasn't designed for those children, we kind of looked to see if it worked. So very few actually specifically designed for pupils with special education needs and disabilities. There's a clear need for good sample sizes. The majority had less than 70 pupils with special educational needs, and also a clear SEND identification. A lot of them just used, I am now, used the term SEND. Okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, I showed you at the beginning that even if you break down to special schools, you have 7 different categories. Within those 7 different categories, children have lots of different needs. So if you're just grouping SEND, how useful is that for us to interpret? So we need to therefore develop an anti-bullying program for pupils with SEND. It's all progressive in the way we work in research. So then I thought, okay, if we're going to develop an anti-bullying program for pupils with SEND, I really need to think about the definition. I need to make sure it's right. I need to think about the approach. Do we use a whole school approach? Everybody in the school is involved, everyone's speaking the same language, they go, in terms of bullying language, everyone goes to the same sort of assemblies, like the post staff, etc. See themselves as a whole unit, or do I go targeted? So the different context, special schools, as we've seen, the contexts are very different. Do I think more targeted, class-based, rather than see yourself as a whole school? So I need to work that out. I need to think about the teaching and materials, because we know from anecdotally in the school they weren't working for the children with special educational needs. So, inclusive bullying definition. I took on the big challenge of thinking about this definition. So as I said, the Olweus definition that I showed you at the beginning and others are not inclusive enough. I think it's good. Olweus' definition is good. It's a good starting point, but it's not inclusive. They don't acknowledge or represent the experiences of pupils with SEND. And I thought, well, that's not good enough. If I'm creating an anti-bullying program for pupils with special educational needs, it needs to reflect them and their experiences. So we conducted some research split into 2 parts. One was a literature search. We found 102 relevant papers on definitions of anti-bullying, SEND research, or strategies linked in, or programs linked in, and so on. Something around definitions. And then we also spoke to, this is just one sample actually, 7 teachers from special schools and 7 parents with children with special educational needs. We spoke to others in mainstream schools and so on, but these were from special education. 100% of the research papers use the 3 key aspects that I identified before from Olweus' definition, so repetition, intent, and power and balance. Those have to be included. Everybody refers to those. Those have to be included. I agree with those. But from the literature and from speaking to parents and teachers, we also said, okay, we need to think about this intent. We need to think about power and balance. We need to think about cyberbullying, because as you'll notice, that wasn't in the original one either. Awareness and social interaction, and direction of bullying. So we needed to think about all of those. Again, I can answer more specific questions about that. What I'll do now is I'll just show you my final definition. So the definition, the bits that you're going to see in blue and italics are the bits I have added to Olweus' definition. So I've said it involves a pattern of behaviour repeated over time from the same or different people and in the same or different methods. Okay, so just because someone starts bullying in a different way doesn't mean that it's not bullying, or just because the people who are bullying you, it's two different people at different times, doesn't mean you're not being targeted. It can take many different forms, including physical contact, words, mean gestures, exclusion from a group, but I've added, or negative contact via digital device or platform, so cyberbullying as well. Involves an imbalance of strength or power. Traditionally, this was always seen as age, if you're older or if you're bigger, etc. But I've said it can also look, this imbalance of strength or power can also look like intellectual capacity, social skill understanding, or emotional stability. And the victim has difficulty defending themselves or is unaware of being bullied. Just because you don't understand that you're being bullied or don't realise you're being bullied doesn't mean you're not being bullied. And harm is being inflicted intentionally. So from this, I've just added here, so all of this work actually was just for the MSc Education students here, all of this work was actually supported by an MSc Education researcher. It's now being published as well, so they have a published paper from this, which is great. From that, we also came up with the term counter-connecting. It was a type of behaviour that looked like bullying, but it didn't quite fit into bullying. So, new term, a new definition. Let me show you this one. So it involves a pattern of behaviour repeated over time. It can occur peer-to-peer, but also between pupils and teachers, often from pupils to teachers. It can take many different forms: physical, words, mean gestures, exclusion, digital device. It's an act that causes unintentional victimisation of another. There is a victim, but there's no bully. And harm may be inflicted unintentionally. So just an example of this, there's lots of different examples you could give us. One example. You can counter-connect with someone else, or you can counter-connect with yourself. The example I'm going to give you is counter-connecting with someone else. I'm giving you that one because that's the easiest to spot and identify. If you've been in schools, you'll probably now think, oh yeah, I think I saw that. So imagine now, for example, if I'm a child who is about to counter-connect and I see Christina and I think, I don't know you, you're maybe in my class, I want to be friends with you, but I don't know how to initiate that. So I might watch for a while and see how you interact with the other friends and so on, and then get the confidence to come up. I don't know what to say, I punch you. Yeah, so I punch you and I think, right, I'm connecting, I'm making physical connection with you. Christina probably doesn't like that, she's probably going to run away. I think we've connected. What we've done is we've counter-connected. I've connected, but in the wrong way. I might run after you and think, okay, we've made a connection there. She's run off, I'm going to run after her. And I punch you again. I'm not meaning to harm you, actually. This is a positive interaction for me. I'm not bullying, but there is a victim. This can go on for days, weeks, months, years. You are being victimised and need to be acknowledged as being victimised, but I shouldn't be defined as a bully, because my intent is not to harm you, my intent is trying to make you my friend. So there's a subtle difference there. So counter-connecting. Again, an MSc Education student research supported this, and it has been published with that student, which is fantastic. So thinking about social network analysis, I need to think, would a whole school approach be suitable? So we know that in mainstream schools, anti-bullying programs at a whole school are the most effective. We know that they work, but we don't know in special schools. So I thought, okay, well, what do we know about positive and negative peer interactions amongst pupils with SEND and pupils in special schools? So we conducted social network analysis. Again, I had a wonderful team working on this earlier this year. They worked in 3 UK special schools, one with social, emotional, mental health, one with cognition and learning, and one with autism as the primary needs. And we mapped it. We said to every child that wasn't opted out by their parents, we said to everyone who wanted to take part, we said to them, who are your friends? Like, who are you friends with in school? And they could name up to 10 names. Who are you friends with? Who do you play with? Who is mean to you? And who are you mean to? So it's the friendship network and the bullying involvement network. Again, an MS Education student was also in this. This is a different student, just one doing everything. I'm not going to go into all the detail about these networks, but this is what it looks like. We start networking and saying, what does it look like in relation to mainstream settings? Each of these nodes, the different colours, is an individual child. These squares represent females, the circles represent males. The darker colour means they're older, and the lighter, they're the youngest. So you can really start to see who's naming who as friends. And also there was a play one, a bullying one, but also victimisation. So from this, we can really start seeing, does this look like mainstream school? And as you can see on this one here, this is from the autism school. There is not a single child who hasn't got a friend. They may not have nominated someone else's friend, but they have been nominated as someone they think that they're friends with. So everybody is actually very connected. So with this sort of information, we're thinking, and victimisation it looks very similar to mainstream pockets of victimisation. So we're thinking actually a whole school approach would work. This mirrors what we see in mainstream schools. And in mainstream schools, we know anti-bullying programs as a whole school approach are the best. So we think, okay, a whole school approach is the best for us in this. So clear positive and negative peer interactions, there is peer influence. The structure of friendships and bullying was similar to mainstream schools. All three schools showed more equal distribution of pupil importance, unlike most mainstream schools. So we don't have that same hierarchy. We didn't see the same hierarchy, so popularity or the targeting of bullying, it was much more equal distributed. And a whole school anti-bullying approach would be suitable. So a little bit about Kiva Send, and then we'll start wrapping up. So Kiva Send, as you recognise Kiva, we've added on the Send just to suggest that it's special educated and learning disabilities, suitable for pupils with. Influencing the peer context is thus essential in effective anti-bullying work, as I said. We need to focus on peers. So what we've done, and this is where Caitlin and I are still working on this together, Kiva Send takes Kiva as a programme, and I have, with consultation from special school staff, I have rewritten it, keeping the main themes, because we know that's the evidence base, we know that works, but adapting it, adapting the activities, adapting the wording, adapting the way it's going to be delivered, giving multiple options depending on the types of children's needs that you have in the classroom, the type of dynamic that you have. So it keeps the themes, but it is more inclusive and more acceptable. All lessons have accompanying presentation slides and handouts. So again, Caitlin has worked brilliantly on this, along with Olivia, who's also on the project, to create supporting presentation slides for every single lesson. So children get the visuals as well as just the delivery. So far, the full programme is developed. We've had 223 pupils from 8 schools who have, we've successfully collected baseline data from. There's 290 children who are enrolled in the trial. We've got a split of primary need. So the majority of children with primary need is autism. Then the next main primary need is learning disability and so on. So we are tracking who is in our sample, who is our population of children. So what's next? We are currently thinking about the process evaluation, so social validity. Not only can it be delivered, but do they enjoy delivering it? Do the pupils enjoy receiving it? Do they like the activities? Does it work? You know, all the sort of, not just is it effective, but do they like it? Because if they don't like it, then they're not going to deliver it properly. And if the children don't like it, they won't receive it properly. And then we will conduct the follow-up in the summer. And then we're hoping to think about a definitive trial where we can reduce bullying in special schools through an anti-bullying programme. That's TBC. We have to see if the feasibility works first, is what we're working on now. If it's feasible, we'll run a whole trial. So the power of peers, if we can increase awareness, if we can reframe involvement, peers can reduce bullying. It has to come, from my perspective, it has to come from the peers. They have to be supported to feel able to stand up. Less than bullying equals better academic outcomes, better mental health. We know that. I won't talk about wisdom so much at the moment. Just to say also we're developing mental health monitoring in special schools, so I won't talk about that because of time. So I would just say thank you. And I would also like to say particular thanks to SEAMS, my research group, which is special education and mainstream schools. Lovely little picture of them, plus Claire and Libby who are not in it. So all the research could not have been done without this fantastic team. But anyway, thank you very much.